Hello and welcome to our program Where God Weeps. Today we consider the country of Nigeria, one of Africa's most populous nations with over 130 million inhabitants. The population is mainly divided along religious and ethnic lines, with Muslims living in the north and Christians predominantly in the south. The country lived a relatively peaceful and stable existence up until about 10 years ago, when the Sharia, a code of Islamic conduct, was introduced into a number of states in northern Nigeria, which provoked a series of riots that spread all across the country. To tell us more about the situation facing Catholics today living in northern Nigeria, we have the pleasure to welcome to our studio Father Anthony Ikhenoba, who works in the Kaduna Archdiocese in northern Nigeria. Father, thank you for being with us and welcome to our program.
Thank you very much, Mark.
Father, can you give us 2 words about the situation of Catholics in northern Nigeria?
Yeah, the Catholic Church is a very vibrant church in northern Nigeria, in Kaduna in particular. We have a lot of Catholics. We have a large number of Catholics. For example, in the parish where I work, we have well over 6,000 parishioners. And we have 3 masses on a Sunday. On weekdays, we have 1 mass each. We have a good number of children. The number I have said is not with children, without children, 6,000. We may be talking about another 2,000 children.
What would be the percent of Catholics in the Kaduna Diocese?
We'll be talking here about 60 to 65%.
So it's quite strong.
Yeah, it's quite strong of Catholics here.
Father, can you tell us what is the Sharia in 2 words?
Sharia is a way of life for the Muslims. It's a code of conduct of the Muslims. Just like we Christians have our own way of life, we have our own rules, we have our own code. So the Sharia is a way of life and a code of conduct for the Muslims.
Now, how has the new situation of this crisis with the Sharia affected the lives of Catholics in the Kaduna Archdiocese?
If anything, I think it has made the faith stronger and the church grow more, despite the fact that a lot of people now live their former way of, places of livelihood where they used to stay. They have left those places now for other places. They have relocated. Like, for example, those who were living in the northern part of Kaduna have moved down to the southern part of Kaduna, and those who were living in far north, like places like Kano and Zamfara, have moved down closer home, who are not originally from the northern parts of the country. So, if anything, it has the faith has grown very strong.
But at the same time, there's a climate of fear that has come with this renewal of faith, yes?
Yeah, there's a lot of fear because as the slightest provocation, as the slightest thing, they ignite the whole fire of violence and all that, and there's a lot of clashes, and so it brings fear into people, and they actually live in fear because they don't know what will happen next minute.
And this is something relatively new to Nigeria. It has only been introduced in the last 10, 12 years.
Yeah, the Sharia has been there for a very long time, but maybe it has been underground. The government recognizes the Sharia, but what has now happened is that it is taking a different dimension. It is taking a political dimension, and they are pushing it as though it has not been there. They are pushing it to the extreme and forcing everybody to embrace it.
How can this happen? Because, in fact, in the Nigerian constitution, Article 4 proclaims freedom of religion. How is it possible that the Sharia is now being implemented against the constitution, effectively?
Well, the issue is that we Christians, for example, have our own code of conduct, have our own way of life. The goal is to achieve heaven. The Muslims too have their way of life. If you commit this offense, you are punished. Just to keep check on the excesses of some people, so that people don't go to the extremes unchecked. So they have their own way of life, they have their own code of conduct. The problem here that we have to address is the way they try to impose this on other people or other religions who are not Muslims. They try to impose it and force it on others who do not really subscribe to their religion. So it's like the problem is the force on by the Muslims, by some of the Muslims who are extremists, for other people to embrace the Sharia law.
How is this affected practically in a day-to-day reality?
Well, every day we live side by side with the Muslims. They are brothers and they are sisters. And for example, in a house, you discover that there are Muslims and there are Christians, especially in the south and in the west. There are Muslims and there are Christians living side by side in the same house. Now, in the north here, you discover that we have to go, for example, to the same schools. We have to go to the same offices. We have to take the same buses and all that. In some areas, for example, in Kaduna, there are areas marked out for Sharia practice. Those areas, the Muslims have to dress in a certain way. And so if you live in that area, you have to dress in the same way. You're forced to dress in the same way.
So Catholics are obliged to follow the Sharia codes if they are living in that
If they live in that area, yes. Like they are not to sell alcohol, they are not to drink alcohol, and other things like that. They are obliged to the law.
They cannot travel on the same buses. That is, men and women are separated on public transport.
Yeah, they are separated on public transport in extreme cases. In places like Zamfara and Jigawa and Kano and all these places.
Now, in these places, can a Catholic live his faith?
Yeah, sure. You can live your faith, and the Catholics have been living their faith, but in fear. There's some kind of limitation. Because of a limitation in there. They live their faith, but in fear, because it's limited.
Do you have practical examples of how people have been discriminated against?
There are so many examples out there, but I'm not in a position to point out to a certain example to say this person was discriminated against or that person was discriminated against. But there's a whole weather of discrimination all over the place because of the differences in religion and all that.
Have you yourself suffered discrimination?
Not as such, because I don't live in an area that is very volatile. I live in a more predominantly Christian area. So to a certain extent, I have not faced any discrimination or frustration from Muslims. But I would say that when you go to government offices and you are pursuing a certain thing, you have some difficulties. That I would say I have faced. You have some difficulties, like getting your papers through, like getting C of O, like getting some papers through. You have some difficulties. But on the whole, I live in a place where it's predominantly Christian, and I don't face such problems. But others face a lot of problems, like those who live in the northern part of Kaduna, for example. They face problems like accommodation problems. The Christians have to pay more rent than others, and sometimes they are ejected out of their home. After each crisis, the Christians are ejected out of the homes of the Muslims, and they are asked to vacate their homes and find accommodation elsewhere.
But Christians and Muslims, they've been living together now for centuries in peace. This new, as you say, new situation that has come into Nigeria, how does this threaten the stability of the country? Is there a risk that this could spread and further fragment Nigerian society?
Like you said, they have been living together for a very long time, and we have been living in peace. But the introduction, I would say the violent introduction of Sharia has brought some kind of suspicion between us, and we no longer trust each other. But again, I don't see it breaking the country or fragmenting the country in any way, because there is law, there is order, there's law enforcement. And to a certain extent, Kaduna, the governor has been trying to at least hold on, check on the extremists, the extremism of some of the Muslims, so that they don't go wild. So and in the country too, there is security that can check on them to a certain extent. So I don't see this. We have been living with each other for a very long time. There is fear that it might break the country, but again, we have no option than to live together. We have no option than to live together because we have come a long way. It's just that we have to understand each other.
But radical Islam is increasingly on the rise. I mean, Nigeria is only one example of some of the countries in Africa which is experiencing this difficulty. How do you see this wider implication for Africa, the relations between Muslims and Christians?
Yeah, they've been trying to conquer Nigeria in a way or two. Once they get Nigeria, they see it as a model for all other African countries, because Nigeria is a force to be reckoned with in the sub-region and in the continent as a whole. And so once they are able to grab Nigeria and to have the Sharia well established in Nigeria, they see it as a victory for other African countries, because Africa is a force to be reckoned with. So if they succeed in Nigeria, it means too they are going to succeed to a large extent in the other parts.
Now, where are these influences coming from? They're not coming from within Nigeria, they are also coming from outside. Where are these influences coming from?
Yeah, one cannot but think that this influence come from outside, like you said. But from where we cannot tell. But there are influences, there is support, there is funding of extremism, of radical Islam and all that. There is funding from outside, but we cannot tell from where it is coming from. But definitely there is an external influence.
Now, many of the Catholics in the north of Nigeria have responded to this new crisis by packing their bags and leaving and going south, where the Christian population is a majority. What does this mean for the church in northern Nigeria?
Yeah, that is true. Many Christians, many Catholics have moved down south, west to their home of origin or their origin. And the interesting thing about it is that they still come back. From time to time, they come back, and because they still have their property down in the north, so they come back and they have their children in the north who are in school, who are working, and they come back. But once there is any crisis, any clash, they go back. But the implication here is that more and more Christians are leaving the northern, more and more Christians from the south are leaving the north. But for the Christians who are northerners, they have no option, you see. That is where the fear is. They have no option, like the Christians who are from the south, who are from the west, who move back to their place of origin. The Christians from the north who are northern Christians have no option. So the implication for the church is that the church lives in fear. It lives in fear each time the Sharia is mentioned. It lives in fear.
How is the Catholic Church trying to bridge and approach this problem of this crisis between Muslims and Christians? What projects of reconciliation, for example, are being put into place to try and ease this situation?
If you say in Nigeria, the example I'll readily give is the Interreligious Dialogue Commission, which is in place as an institution to try to bring some kind of a reconciliation between the Muslims and the Christians and even the other religions. Interreligious Dialogue Commission of the Catholic Secretariat of the Catholic Bishops' Conference. They are trying in every way. It's in dioceses now. It's everywhere. I mean, the interreligious dialogue is one project that the bishops have tried to put in place to see that there is some kind of reconciliation and understanding and education in the area of a relationship between Christians and Muslims.
And it's having success?
Yeah, it's having success, but it's with some difficulties, and it is coming slowly, but I think it will surely come at the end of the day.
And there are also then obviously Muslims who are against this fanaticism that's being imported into Nigeria.
Yeah, there are so many Muslims out there who are very nice, devout Muslims, and they are against all these radical trends and extremism. And I've had the cause to relate with some Muslims, and it has been very, very wonderful relationship. We've lived side by side with Muslims, and it has been a very wonderful relationship. But there are those who are on the extreme, and there are Muslims who are really kicking against this extremism, and they don't like it.
We spoke earlier, and you mentioned that there was a revival of the faith in Nigeria, especially a charismatic renewal. Is this also helping to bring these young people back? And how is this charismatic renewal being expressed in Nigeria?
Yeah, the Catholic charismatic renewal is one organization or one group that has really brought the youth and other members of the church who had gone out or who intended to go out back to the Catholic Church, like I said, because of their way of fellowship, or their way of approach to worship. And I think to a large extent, the way of their fellowship we help to tame this rapid outing of the young people, because they tend to give what these Pentecostals give. And so they marry, you can marry the charismatic renewal and the church's worship, and be able to get this youth to stay together.
I want to ask a few questions about you personally. Did you always want to be a priest?
Yeah, sure. I've always longed to be a priest.
Ever since you were a young
I had
lad?
inspiration from the missionaries, the Catholic missionaries, Irish missionaries, who were in my parish then. And I started as an altar server, and from there I went to the minor seminary, to the major seminary. I had wanted always to be a priest from that inspiration that I got from the missionaries.
Was it difficult for your family to accept?
Yeah, initially it was a little bit difficult, but later on they sorted out themselves. My father was more okay, it's okay, because he was a catechism teacher. It was okay, but my mother, it was a little bit difficult, because they think there is no future out there in the priesthood. That's what she thought then. Being a woman, I'm the first child.
You're the first child?
Yeah, I'm the first child.
And so there's an additional responsibility on you, in fact.
Yeah, there's additional responsibility. She thinks that I should be the one to take care of the other children. I should be the one to inherit the wealth of the family. I should be the one to be the head of the family when the father is not there. And so it was a little bit difficult for her. But with time, like I said, they sorted out themselves, and they're okay. At my ordination, they were very happy.
How many brothers and sisters are you?
I have 3 sisters and other 5 brothers.
And none of them have wanted to follow in your footsteps?
No, not yet. Not yet.
Is it too tough?
Well, it is a way I have chosen, and I think despite its difficulties, God gives the grace, and so that keeps me on.
And for the others, they look at you, and is it for them also a possible model to follow, or?
Yeah, they admire me from afar, but they won't want to go that way. They
don't want to come any closer.
They don't want to come closer.
You mentioned that you were out in the bush at some point, in a parish in the bush. And
yeah,
one of your brothers came to visit you.
Yeah, I was out in the bush there, and for about 5 years, And it was difficult for them to visit, because once one of them visited and he had dust all over him, and was saying, God, is this the place that my brother, I wouldn't want to come here again. In fact, some of them said that the one visited once and did not find me on CD. I was not at home. I had gone out and I was going to pass the night. And it was not funny, because he had to go back. And then he said that he will never visit again. So I see all these difficulties, but on the whole, I'm at home with it, and because God gives the grace.
Father, you are also responsible for children's projects in the Kaduna diocese. What does this mean? What are challenges facing children in your diocese?
Yeah, there are a whole lot of challenges facing children. A question of children orphaned by the scourge of AIDS, question of poverty, question of education. Children suffer all this most, because of the scourge of AIDS, parents die and leave these children, and their other relatives are not able to cater for them, because they have not been able to cater for their own families, so they cannot take them in. And the question of poverty, the parents are not able to fend for them. They cannot give them the diet, the nutrients they need, and they cannot pay for their education and all that.
So these children end up on the streets, in fact?
Most of them end up on the street. Most of them end up on the streets, and they take into drugs, they take into cults and all that, and it's a very dangerous trend if it is allowed to go on.
And what happens? Where do these children go for help?
The children mostly come to the church, those who are members of the church, and a few other people who are not members of the church. They usually come to the church for help, and the church, we usually offer what they can, and the much they can. What they cannot do, it's a pity. They cannot go beyond their...
Just for lack of money?
Just for lack of funds, yeah.
And what can the church do? How does the church try and help these young children?
The church sometimes offer a scholarship, for example, in area of education, offer scholarship, and there are projects that tend to help the families to support themselves. You can imagine a family of 10 living on the meager income of the mother, because the father is out of his job for a very long time, and it's the offending, the whole thing is on the mother, and for 10 children or for 8 or 9 children, they have to live on the meager income of the mother, who sells vegetables or sells bread or sells granite on the streets out there. And so it's very, very difficult. So the church tries in its way to help them to realize they are able to raise some money through trade, a little petty trading and all that. So the church empowers them in that way, and the church in its way gives them soft loan if they have the opportunity. Microcredit scheme. And there are a whole lot of other programs that the church runs, but it all boils down to funds. They do with the little they get and help those people.
What is your greatest joy in this work that you're doing with the children?
My greatest joy would be that these children are gradually, especially in the Archdiocese, and I think it's a model for the other churches in the North, that they're beginning to realize their mission from Christ, and that they have an opportunity to know that they can relate with the Muslims, for example. Because if you begin to build them, groom them from the foundation, they are able to realize their mission from Christ to relate to other brothers and sisters of other religion. And the children tend to see this mission as a mission not only to their own families, not only to their own friends, but a mission to other people. And my joy is that the church is able to support the less privileged children through the other children. Because the motto of the children is children helping children. So we are able to bring them together to realize their mission from Christ through material and spiritual support. So that is for me my joy in the ministry with the children.
And what would be your greatest suffering in this ministry?
Well, my greatest suffering will be the fear of the unknown. The next minute, what's going to happen? What's going to happen, for example, if there is a clash, if there's a Sharia clash, once again, what's going to happen to the children? What's going to happen to the flock? What's going to happen to my members? What's going to happen to Christians? What's going to happen to Catholics? That is my greatest fear. Apart from that, it has been worth it. Yeah.
Father, thank you for having been with us today, and we wish you all the best in your work in Nigeria. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for having been with us on our program today. And if you want to know more information about the situation of the Church in Nigeria, we encourage you to consider the contact information presented at the end of this program. And I look forward to seeing you next time on our program, Where God Weeps.